today. Today I'm going to be discussing chapter 16, downloading data, and yeah, just basically working with CSV files and JSON and accessing those files to access the data and use that data to make graphs and display it in the terminal as well. So firstly, I've imported this CSV file, right? Created a folder weather data and put the CSV file, which contains all this data over here about the weather in this area. And so in order to use that, you have to import CSV, also importing path from pathlib for the graph, importing pyplot, as well as datetime to work with dates. Then we use the style method use to style the graph that we're going to display, and then here create an instance named path, and basically this instance over here we are gonna locate the file. So access the folder and then we locate the file, which is Sitka Weather 07 2021, which is this file over here with all of this data, so we can work with it. Then over here, this lines variable, within it, using the path instance, we call this method read text, which basically reads the text in the file, and split lines basically stores each line as an item in the list. So when we basically pass it to the list, it will store each item in the list. Then over here we have reader, a variable, and basically here csv.reader basically reads the CSV file, and we know that reader contains the basically the data in the CSV file. So this will read the lines, and it basically also converts it to like a format that we can read on Python as well. Then the header row, basically next reader retrieves the first row of the data. So essentially it will retrieve this row over here when we print header row. Then dates and highs, these are empty lists that we're gonna pass specific values to from the CSV file. Then fig x creates the figure and axis, and subplot creates the plot, so creating the figure and axis for the graph. Then we have this for loop where the row variable loops through reader, and we know that reader contains the CSV, which is converted to a format that we can read basically in Python. So because it loops through, reader is going through the CSV file, and basically within this loop we have current date, and current date has date time dot strip time, right? And within here we have the row, which basically we're indexing the row by 2. So when you look here, we count 0, 1, 2. So that means we are indexing index 2 in the CSV file. So we're gonna get the dates, right, which is the third row. And to structure the dates, we structure the year, month, and day. And strip time converts the string representing a date or time into a datetime object. Then single high variable that we made, and within it we're indexing the row by 4. So in this case we will get these values for the high temperature. And then basically here we're gonna append the current date. So we're gonna append all the values from the current date, which are the dates that were indexed, and we're gonna append it to the dates list, which is empty. So we're gonna append it to there. And then same with the highs, the high temperature, we're gonna append single high, which has an index of 4, which basically retrieves the high temperature, and we append that to highs. Then we print it and it displays in the terminal. Then x.plot, basically creating a graph, a line graph, and then we set the titles and the labels, and we use plt.show to display the graph. So this is essentially what we get from the graph: the dates that were passed into the empty list and indexed, and the temperatures here, and the labels as well. So that's that. And then here the difference is just adding another list, lows. This list is empty, and basically just within the for loop, we have this variable low, and here we have int row 5, which basically indexes the row by 5. So we'll get these values here for the low temperature. Then we append all those values to the lows list, which was empty, so we append that, and then printing it as well. Then here we have created another plot, so another line graph. So basically it will display a comparison between the high temperature and the low temperature, and we've set the one for low to blue, and then we use this alpha function to basically make the lines transparent, and then set the title and labels, and then show the graph. So this is all just accessing this data using indexing, because we've imported CSV. We've basically using the reader to read the CSV file, and to actually also append all that data within the list. And when we place these variables that represent the lists, when we put them in the plots over here, so for the dates and highs, when we put them here as parameters or as arguments, let me say, all that data will be displayed on the graph, because we're using x.plot to display that data. So how that will look, let's see. So now we have for highs and for lows, basically, with regards to the temperature. So the one in red and the one in blue. Basically because we used x.plot twice for both lists. Then the next code over here, we're using the Death Valley simple CSV file. So this one contains much more data, and yeah. So we change this the file here, the file name, to Death Valley, so that we can actually locate that file. In order to locate the file, and then basically lines reads the in this lines variable, we use path to read the text and use the split lines method within the CSV. Then the reader as well, where you can read the files, we can read the lines within the CSV file and format it in a readable format in Python. And then we have these empty lists. Then subplots displays the graph. Now the difference here now is we're still indexing by 2 to get the date, and then we're using we're using exceptions. So now we have a try block, which basically checks if there's an error or not. So within the try block, we have single high variable, which in here we pass it to an integer, and we loop, and we basically indexing the row by 3 in order to get the high temperature, and then here we're indexing the row by 4 to get the low temperature. Then the except block basically is for when you have an error. Well, in this case there wouldn't be an error, so it does not jump to the except block, it jumps to the else block, where we basically appending the current date to dates, the single high variable to highs, which has the high temperature, and this to lows. So basically appending it to the list. Then x.plot to display both the highs and lows for the temperature, and then basically the title. This title variable here will be passed into this parenthesis when we call set title, and we'll show the title, then the labels and all of that. Then plt.show displays it. Now let's see how the graph looks. So essentially almost the same, but this is for Death Valleys, and now the dates are set to the year and the month because it's a larger file. And yeah, this is how it looks basically, with the label, the header, the dates, and the temperature. Oh, and also the print. I didn't discuss the print. This print, so we can basically also print the lows, so we can see how it looks on the terminal when it's formatted. Because here we basically let me see. We have, with this line of code, we're basically reading the values in the CSV file, so the data, and also formatting it so we can see it here on the terminal. So you can see all of that was retrieved over here and placed within the lists, which are these empty lists here. So yeah. So that was working with the Death Valley data. let's see. Cool, so here we're working with JSON, right? So we're basically gonna use, basically just used this JSON file. So I've placed it within parentheses here when I created the path instance. So here's the JSON file. As you can see, there's dictionaries within this file, holding key pair values. So we can access that file using path. Then read text will basically read everything in that file. Then over here we have this variable, and within it we're basically using json.loads to load the contents, which is here. And we know that the contents basically uses the path instance to read the text, right? So it reads the text in path, and we know that path has the file JSON, the GeoJSON file. And because we're loading contents to JSON, it will basically be in this variable or EQ data. Then over here we have the variable or EQ dict, and what we're doing is we're indexing features. So this is a key within the it's basically a key within the JSON file. So it's basically the key within the JSON file, and we know that in this dictionary, this key, right, has specific values, which is a list. It contains a list. So the key has the values, which is the list over here. So we're basically accessing this key so we can get these values essentially in this JSON file. So that's what happens when we index it. And then we have these empty lists, mags, which represents magnitudes, longs, longitude, lats, which is latitudes, and they are empty lists. Then we use EQ dict to loop or to iterate through the all EQ dicts variable. And we know that this variable basically has the features key, and we know that features key holds these values, which is the list, the values within the list. So because of that, we use EQ dict within mag. We create this variable mag, and EQ dict, we use that as it's looping through the values in all EQ dicts, so the values in features. As it loops through that, it indexes property and mag. Then for longitude, it indexes geometry, coordinates, and 0. So whatever represents 0 in the index within this file. And then the same here, it indexes geometry, coordinates, and 1. So these are basically the keys within the list that is in features, right? So the keys here, we're indexing and accessing those so we can access the values. Then we're gonna append, basically just appending the values of mag, which are here, which are the values assigned to these keys in the JSON file, right? So these values, which are there in the JSON file, and we're basically just appending it to these empty lists for magnitude and for longitude and for latitude. Then we print the mags of variable or the mags list, because now it has all of that data in the list because we've appended it, also for longitude and also for latitude. And when we run it, you can see the data from the file is displayed here. So that's basically a summary of downloading data and using CSV files as well as JSON to create graphs using the data within those files and to display the data here in the terminal. Cool.